It's Fire Emblem Engage release day, everybody. Hello, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and the day has finally come. The day that I have been excited for and also experiencing some trepidation about. The next mainline entry in the Fire Emblem series, Fire Emblem Engage, is officially released as of about 12 hours ago on the East Coast of the United States. I stayed up last night, played about the first 4 hours of the game, and today we're going to give my first impressions of what I felt about it thus far. So, let's begin. In case you're new here, there was a couple of things that I wanted to say right off the bat. First of all, if you like what you see, you enjoy my streams or any of my other content, please subscribe. I'm a small YouTuber trying to make YouTube my full-time career. My goal is to hit 15,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I've had a lot of success with Tactics Ogre recently. Going to be more Tactics Ogre content in the future and plenty of Fire Emblem stuff. So if you feel like supporting, that'd be great. Thank you. Also, I don't do spoilers here. We're not going to be showing spoilery stuff in this video, in the gameplay footage that I have going on, anything like that. If there's anything that I feel like is going to be a spoiler, I will state as such, but my intention is to keep this video in particular completely spoiler-free. Gonna have footage from like chapter 2, maybe even that far. We'll see. So don't worry about that. If you're worried about it, don't gotta worry about that here. So, the impressions. I mean, if anyone's been around the channel, you know that I've been skeptical about the game. Fire Emblem is my favorite series of all time, and yet Engage has been a little for me in the way it looks and the way they're presenting it, all that type of stuff. So I was going into it with a skeptical eye, and man, if Engage doesn't just hit you right in the face, right off the bat, with everything that was making me skeptical about it. So, we'll talk visuals and, I guess, like, dialogue characterization first, then get into the much better stuff, which is, like, the gameplay and the actual visual quality. So, right when you start the game, you get slapped with this, what felt like a Pokemon theme song XP. It was weird. It was very, very weird. Someone described it as very poppy, peppy, which I think is accurate. But it was just a lot. It was a lot when my expectations were already kind of mixed. So we got hit with that, which was rough, and then a lot of dialogue and exposition that was also kind of rough. But fortunately, the game doesn't take that long to throw you into some gameplay stuff, so that's good. But yeah, characters. These are probably some of the worst written characters that I've seen in a Fire Emblem game, and I've played all the mainline Fire Emblem games in a long time. Like, issues with translations for the Fates characters aside, I loved all the Fates characters. Not a huge fan of these characters thus far. So that's not ideal. In terms of the actual designs of the characters, the most talked about thing when it comes to Fire Emblem Engage, again, my trepidation and my concerns, I think, were well-founded. They're very loud. If we're being charitable, we could say bold. If you're not being charitable, maybe obnoxious would be the way to put it. Man, like, again, listen, if you like the designs, if you enjoy what's on display here, that's fine. You're allowed to. And I'm not necessarily saying that they're like, well, I would say some of the designs are just outright bad, but for the most part, the designs are less just outright bad and just not for me, and to me, not suited for Fire Emblem. Some of the designs, I think, are just bad. It is what it is, I'm sorry. And I think part of that is due to the transition from 2D to 3D. The 2D art that we've seen from Mika Picasso, awesome. I've really enjoyed it. Both her non-Fire Emblem art and her Fire Emblem art. Don't think it translated that well to 3D for some of it. So that's a lot right off the bat. Then, again, the actual characterization is... We can already see some of these characters' quirks coming out and how those quirks define their personality in a very, this is a character kind of way, less of a, this is a person who is a character in a story kind of way. And then the voice acting is rough as well at times. It's not the worst at all, but there's certainly times where things could have been dialed in a little bit or redone a couple of times. So it's not a huge deal for me. Again, Fire Emblem is about the story and the gameplay, not the voice acting. Voice acting is a very new thing to Fire Emblem for the most part, so it doesn't bother me too much, but when it happens, it does happen. Now, visually, in terms of actual visual design, the game is stunning. It is a far cry improved in terms of graphical fidelity compared to something like Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I love, was my game of the year when it came out, and I think is one of the best Fire Emblems ever made. But we all know it definitely had some visual problems. Doesn't seem to be the case here with Engage. They definitely took all criticisms of Three Houses in that regard to heart, and the game looks awesome. I mean, the maps look really good. Backgrounds actually look like backgrounds and not weird, stretched, angular graphics. Ugh. And I mean, the actual animations are phenomenal. Every time I go into combat, I'm excited just to see what the combat animation is going to be. How characters are going to flow with one another, dodging, striking, taking hits, and rolling. There's been a lot of that, which has been really cool. And it's definitely very reminiscent of Shadows of Valencia, which had some of the most dynamic combat animations I think we've ever seen in Fire Emblem, and I loved that. So, really, really happy to see that. I can't wait to get more characters, more classes, new magic, all that type of stuff, and see the way they all interact animation-wise. And then just the cutscenes are really good. Like, some of the characters can be very dead fish-faced when we're doing normal characters interacting cutscenes, but then the way that the characters are actually designed and animated and the facial expressions that they have in some of the proper animated CG cutscenes are really nice. I do really, really like that, and I gotta give credit where credit is due. Those cutscenes have been a lot of fun. So there's good stuff here. It's just you have to be able to see past the obnoxiousness of some of the designs and the presentation. And again, don't go into this one looking for a good story and good characters. I promise you it's not going to happen, which kind of lines up with what early reviews were saying as well. So, moving on from presentation, though, I want to get to what has actually been really, really good about Fire Emblem Engage. What's been engaging, if you'll pardon me a pun. It's not my fault the game is named that. The gameplay itself, in the first 4-ish chapters, has been stellar. I'm playing on Hard Classic, as I always do in every Fire Emblem game, and right off the bat, the game has not been afraid to punch me in the face and make me take it seriously, and I love that. Conquest, Fire Emblem Fates Conquest, is one of my favorite gameplay experiences in the overall Fire Emblem series, just because of how brutal and unforgiving, but also satisfying the gameplay is. And Radiant Dawn is up there. Things like Shadows of Valencia are easier to break, but also have their moments of difficulty. This feels like that's up there. This feels like they really took a lot of time to think about mechanics, balance things, balance characters, classes, and actually design maps that you need to think ahead and actually look at what enemy units are doing and where they're going to be going, instead of just throwing yourself into the thick of the fray, like has kind of become a little bit of a thing in Fire Emblem in recent years. There's a particular example that I can think of from Chapter 4, where I was battling an enemy character with one of my new characters, and completely missed that the game was set up in such a way that I would immediately want to charge in and attack this lance fighter that I was targeting, only to realize later that there was an axe cavalry behind it, perfectly in range if you chose such an aggressive action to run up and huck a hand axe at you on the enemy turn. And that completely caught me off guard. I was not prepared for that at all. It was also late, so I wasn't really paying that close attention, but the fact that the game is willing to do stuff like that, awesome. Characters will say, I'm not going to hold back on you, and they don't. They do not at all. Like, we have aggressive bosses, enemies moving up to push very, very aggressively. The new systems like break mechanics absolutely make you rethink the way that you go about combat. The engage mechanic, which we'll talk about in a second, actually useful, and its power feels warranted because enemies are not afraid to kick your ass. It's very nice. I can't wait to play more of it. I can't wait to play more of it, even despite the fact that the designs and the story and the characters are not gelling with me thus far. I still want to just get into that world and play in that sandbox. And that's impressive, because I'm a story and characters-based guy. But the gameplay's just that good. It's just that good. As far as the new mechanics that I do really enjoy, I mentioned it before, the break mechanic, awesome. Basically how break works is if you engage in combat, again, no pun intended that time, it's just a word that I say. It's going to be rough with this title. If you start combat and you have weapon triangle advantage, right? So if you have a sword and you attack an axe fighter, barring certain circumstances, you will actually, if you hit them, trigger a break on them, which will disarm them for the rest of that fight. You can get any follow-up attacks. You can avoid all counterattacks. It's just free. It's just free damage. And that's on anything that has weapon triangle advantage. Now, there are a couple circumstances, like I said, where that won't be the case. Armor units seem to be immune to being broken in such a way, so that's cool. Gives some really nice utility to armor units. And then fortresses seem to apply unbreakable to you, which is really cool and really useful. Gives you another reason to really try and hold terrain. But just the break mechanic as it is forces you to reconsider just throwing a highly statted character at a group of enemies. Because even the character with the highest stats in the world, unless they're literally just so strong that they're immune to damage, can't do anything if their weapon gets broken because they're at the weapon triangle disadvantage. Now, on the following turn, it's not like your weapon is gone. You were just disarmed, so you'll be able to then counterattack, whatever, do anything that you're going to do. But it still wastes that entire enemy phase if you keep getting broken over and over. That, combined with the fact that enemies actually have really good stats, means that you need to be so careful about how you go about approaching any given engagement. Again, it's engagement. It's a normal word that now I feel like I can't say because it's a pun. Oh, I could have named it anything else. Okay, anyway. Any fight that you approach, you need to be very considerate of what your weapon triangle advantages and disadvantages are. Because it only takes one enemy. Like, if you get broken during the enemy phase, that's it. You're broken for that whole enemy phase. So if you've got, say, Vander, who's an Axe Paladin, and you throw him into a group of enemies thinking, oh, well, they're all like Lance Fighters. He'll be able to counterattack all of them, get a lot of damage in, weaken them for the rest of my team to come in, clear up on the player phase. If there's just one sword fighter in that group that can hit Vander, you're done. It's over. He will run in, break Vander's weapon, no counterattacks for the rest of the enemy phase. So it is absolutely willing to punish you. And again, the enemy stats are nothing to scoff at. Like, I've got my Axe Fighter, again, as another example here, who he has weapon triangle advantage. He goes in for the attack thinking, oh, I'll get a break. He only has like an 84% chance to hit. Even though he has weapon triangle advantage against the Lance Fighter, who with their Lance that's more accurate has like a 94% chance to hit. Again, at weapon triangle disadvantage. And again, this is hard classic, but like, that's good to see. It's good to know that we're not just statistically superior on top of also being the player and having a wider breadth of strategic understanding. It's really awesome, and it makes it so that all the new mechanics at play are much more important to engage with. I was going to say, God, that's going to be terrible. To utilize, making me stretch my vocab here. And that's awesome because there's a lot of really cool new mechanics at play as well. Now, a lot of it has to do with the actual engage mechanic. I won't get into that too much because it's kind of spoilery, and each engage character that you get does different things and all that type of stuff. So I'll let you discover that for yourself. But every single one is different and completely changes the way that you are able to use the unit that's wielding that engage character, right? That's wielding that ring. But like I said before, it really feels like you need it. Like, there's going to be enemy encounters where you're like, I need to engage here and use this power boost, almost like a temporary promotion, or we're quite possibly going to lose a character. And I like that. Again, it makes this whole system that seemed like it was going to be so over the top and ridiculous feel so much more balanced, which is nice. We also have a lot of new unit types. Like, you've got, say, an Axe Fighter, but they have a subtype that's called Backup. And now, so that Axe Fighter, whenever they are in combat, or whenever an ally is in combat with an enemy that the Axe Fighter is also in range of, the Axe Fighter will actually come in and get a little support attack. Not for full damage or anything like that. It's only been like 2, 3, 4 damage. But still, every time an ally engages in combat, I was going to say, with an enemy, and that Axe Fighter is next to that enemy, they will get a free hit in. They could miss, but still. And every single unit has a subtype like that that does different stuff. You have different units that can like activate guard poses. The chi fighter, chi healer, chi monk, something like that. As long as they have full HP, you can activate a stance where for the rest of that next turn, they will actually block any hits that adjacent allies would take and lose 20% of their own HP as a result. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Terrain bonuses are massive. A random thicket that's like woods in older Fire Emblem games gives 30 avoid base to anyone standing in it. It's insane. But then you've got mages who are also mystical units that ignore terrain bonuses. So there's a lot of moving pieces outside of the normal Fire Emblem formula that you need to think about when you're approaching these fights. Terrain, suddenly, massively important. Like, it was already important in past Fire Emblem games, but it is vital now. Positioning is huge. When you use your engage and what you do with it and what engages you have available to you, massively important. Keeping track of enemy formations, what type of enemy units are in the formation, and where can you kind of position yourself and attack and retreat to make use of break mechanics and not get broken yourself. Very important. There's a lot of that going on. It's made for a very full gameplay experience thus far. And again, I'm only 4 chapters in. I can't imagine how that's going to evolve over time. So if you couldn't tell, I'm very impressed with the game thus far, and the gameplay has kind of overshadowed my issues that I have with a lot of the design elements of the game. So that's awesome. As far as outside combat game mechanics, I haven't had the chance to experiment with that much. We're talking here about the Somniel, which is kind of like the My Castle or Garreg Mach Monastery replacement for this game. From what I've seen of it thus far, all I can really do is go around and talk to my characters and maybe engage in support conversations. There's obviously going to be a lot of stuff that opens up and unlocks in there. We've seen a couple screenshots from like the first trailer and things like that, where we can see shops and an armory and a blacksmith and different places where you can engage in. I never realized how much I said that word until now. Where you can take part in different activities like exercising and farming and different weird little things that hopefully have some sort of bonus, or maybe don't, so I can ignore them. I don't know. So the Somniel is obviously going to evolve over time, but I can't give an impression of it right now because it's just not thus far. As far as other aspects of design go, I have to say I'm really enjoying the music. Music has been really, really good. Enemy phase music for the Corrupted is awesome. Overall, like, themes for different Engage characters and different maps that are obviously remixes of past titles, but done really, really well. I love that. I'm a huge soundtrack guy, and I love hearing some classic stuff come back in little ways here and there. Right. Lost my train of thought for a second there. But, like, generic designs, some of the non-royal designs have actually been really nice, and those characters are already starting to grow on me design-wise. The only support we've seen thus far was fine. Not as bad as I expected it to be. I expected some real, like, Awakening Fates, like, Three Houses, Black Eagles level dialogue from the one support we've seen thus far. And again, it wasn't Shakespearean in its quality or anything, but it wasn't terrible either, so I'm waiting to see what other supports we get, see how that writing goes. There's a lot to like here, which I'm happy about, because again, Fire Emblem is my favorite series of all time. I would have been so upset if this game was just a dumpster fire. And again, there's stuff I don't like about it, and I've been getting a lot of comments from people talking about how there's a lot of stuff they don't like about it as well, and I totally get that. I'm right there with you, to be quite honest. But it's still been a lot of fun, and I can't wait to play more. So, as far as first impressions go, I'm definitely more positive than negative. I have my gripes, I have my complaints, and frankly, I don't see anything about those gripes and complaints really changing. It's pretty upfront about what the game is and how it's going to present itself. If it changes, cool. I don't think it will. But the fact that my complaints that I've been holding on to since the reveal of the game are being overshadowed by the gameplay and the quality of combat and the mechanical beauty of it, I guess. That's really cool. I'm very happy to see that. So I'm going to put this video up, going to start working on a couple of other things, and I'll be streaming some more in about 6 hours from when I'm recording this at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to be there, it should be up on the channel by the time I put this video up. It'll be scheduled. And we're going to see where the game goes. Hopefully, it continues to hold up, because I've been loving it thus far. For now, though, I don't really have a whole lot else to say. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching this, like I said before at the start of the video, I'm a small YouTuber trying to make YouTube my full-time career. If you'd be willing to subscribe, support the channel, that'd be great. Don't have to, but it would be nice. And again, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.